All right, let me go ahead and see.
Recording in progress.
Okay, so Scott, you've been talking about a lot of training you've been doing recently, specifically with the healthcare industry. What are some things that you have been seeing, recently that could potentially be causing incidents? Potentially, we don't know, but like the one that Ascension is going through right this very moment.
Just for some background, I'm Scott Augenbaum, retired FBI agent. I spent the majority of my career in Nashville, Tennessee, dealing with data breaches and cybercrime incidents in the healthcare sector because Nashville has a really robust healthcare sector. So let's talk about a couple of these things that I see in common that occur in almost a majority of the issues that I deal with, especially in healthcare. Healthcare is a prime target. Why? Because they have PHI, personal health information, names, dates of birth, social security numbers, billing information, medical information. That shows up on the dark web, and it's a cyber criminal's dream. So what I want to do now is break these up into smaller sound bites for you, like a little bit at a time.
Absolutely. So what are some of the trends that you're seeing now within the healthcare industry, that could be a problem for them?
Well, right now, healthcare organizations are being targeted by cyber criminals for ransomware, where their whole entire network and data is encrypted unless they pay a huge ransom. And unfortunately, a lot of times it's a little too late. Healthcare companies are paying that information. We're also seeing the theft of sensitive financial information. We're also seeing the theft of sensitive healthcare information, and also regular typical scams for invoice scams, and companies are losing billions of dollars.
So you would think, I guess maybe one would think that these, multi-billion-dollar healthcare corporations would be spending a lot of money to protect their information, that PHI, like you were talking about. What is the reality that you're seeing, with a lot of these healthcare industries?
Well, first of all, the cybercrime problem is getting worse and worse year after year, and companies are spending more and more money. But what does it mean when we spend more money and the problem gets worse? It means what we're doing isn't working. And during my decades with the FBI, I've seen cybercrime. During my decades with the FBI, I've seen companies fall victim, but a majority of the cybercrime victimizations could have been prevented if these healthcare organizations were just practicing good cyber hygiene. And let's go through a couple of these steps.
Sure, yeah. Let's talk about just some of the things that companies can do, this good cyber hygiene, and, things that can apply to folks like you and me too.
First of all, we need to have good, robust, strong passwords. If you're a healthcare organization and you do not have at least a 12-character password in place, you are putting your patient's information at risk. Even having a longer password and not having something such as two-factor authentication, which is a second form, because unfortunately the cyber criminals are going to steal our username and password, that two-factor authentication is going to protect so much patient information. The next thing...
Go ahead.
A lot of organizations aren't spending enough time and enough effort and resources on educating the weak link within the organization. And what is that? Us. Our end users are being socially engineered through phishing emails, through text messages, through telephone calls, through social media exploits. That social engineering is the #1 tool of the cyber criminals tool belt, and we all play a huge part in keeping ourselves safe, our families safe, and healthcare organizations safe.
One thing I haven't really talked to you about in the times that we've chatted before is, yes, two-factor authentication is becoming more prevalent now. Is there better ways to do two-factor authentication through like authenticator apps versus, say, those numbers that you get on a cell phone through a text, because maybe sometimes a cyber criminal might be able to intercept that text?
That's a great thing. We are seeing things called two-factor authentication bombing, which is all of a sudden the cyber criminals are just sending us random text messages or authenticator requests, and we're getting fatigued and we click on them. So when we talk about two-factor authentication, let's remember that text messages is the easiest way to do it, but it's the weakest form. Then we have an authenticator app, which is more strong. And then lastly, we have a hardware token. And we look at things in that context. But I hate to tell you, there's so many organizations, even healthcare organizations and individuals that do not use two-factor authentication.
So I imagine, there's a lot. Two-factor authentication is absolutely something that folks like you and I can use. Any other tips, that folks can take away from this? Because I'm sure right now at that hospital, at hospitals across the country, there's a lot of maybe upset family members and patients.
Every day there's another cybercrime incident in the news regarding healthcare. And we have to be really careful. Remember about the social engineering. Be really careful, everyone, if you're going to get an email from that healthcare organization saying, hey, look, there was a data breach. Click on the link to see if you were infected. The cyber criminals are going to do that. They're heartless, they're ruthless, and they're always looking for a new dirty trick to play on us.
All right. Anything else you wanted to mention I didn't ask you?
Why don't we do the piece on the two-factor authentication one more time? Because to me, unfortunately, I'm becoming my own worst critic every time I do these things where I have the time when it's not live to really talk about the importance of two-factor authentication.
That's okay. Yeah, let's talk about two-factor authentication and sort of the different levels of strength, even among that.
Two-factor authentication is so important. It's the second form of authentication. It's kind of like having two locks, and we have to realize that the bad guys are going to steal the first key. So how does it work? Either you're going to get a text message on your cell phone, which is the most common, but it's the weakest form. Then we have an authenticator app, which is an app on our phone that we pull up and we get a random 6-digit text message, and that's a lot stronger. And the third one, which is the most secure, is an actual hardware key token, key fob, that changes. The problem that I have, because a lot of people say that, text messages is very weak, but a majority of the population is still not using two-factor authentication. So if you're hearing my voice, make sure you're putting two-factor authentication on your email and your banking platforms right away.
That's great. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it.
What time is this going on tonight?
So here's the deal. It traditionally would go on at 10 o'clock. If